be funny.
Yeah.
His delivery is just like perfect.
Yeah, oh yeah. He's just like, it comes out of nowhere, and you just look at him, and you're like, was he serious or was he like, yeah.
When he shot that giant buck in Canada, oh my, that video was absolutely priceless. He absolutely.
Oh, Steve, yeah.
All right, there we go. We got Instagram on. We got everything rocking and rolling. All right, guys, we're back. Yeah, we're on, dude. We're live on all social media platforms. We have 0 people watching, so we're doing big things here tonight.
Do it for the gram, baby.
That's it. Just doing it for the gram. The gram pics. We're not cute huntresses with big butts, so we can't. We can't.
I should get some implants maybe and get some more followers and.
Yeah, doing it for the pro staff. Nick.
Yeah.
That's how you got to get it done.
Johnson Wool needs to start dishing out those big bucks. You know what I mean? Or Stagger, one of these guys. You know what I mean?
You know what it is? You know what we should do? Like darn tough socks or something. We'll just model for them. They'll never know if we're men or women. We'll just keep the hairy legs out of it.
Dude, they're gonna know. They're gonna know. Like I have light hair, but there's a lot of it. They're gonna know. Or maybe I'm just one of those, backcountry.
Up there in Maine, you never know, do you?
Yeah. Those all natural chicks,
The BMWs, the big mean women in Maine.
Yeah.
People absolutely love that stuff.
Yeah, you've been up in that country, up in Aroostook County,
That's a weird place, man. Or the last stop, the last gas station in Allagash before you go in, and old Bertha sitting there. Hey guys, how are you today? She's smoking a cigarette in there.
Judy? You mean Judy?
Yeah, Judy.
She died,
Did she really?
She died, and I made the mistake of asking Rich how she died, and you know what he said?
What?
He's like, "What do you think?"
Cancer.
Yeah.
Lung cancer.
You walk into that place and you got to wipe the cigarette smoke off your bag of Doritos,
Steve, that's a magical place. Like, and the thing is that Judy would know every time you were in the woods. Like, she knew that like us Flatlanders were up there, and we've been up there for a week, before the gate opened, and we'd come out to get our gas, our first refill or something. She'd be like, "You guys have been in there for quite some time, huh?" And like, yeah. I can't. I'm gonna miss her up there. It's not the same without her.
It was fun. It's not what it used to be, anyways. So.
No, it's definitely not what it used to be, I guess. I don't know. I missed the heyday. I guess I missed out on the heyday personally. I didn't get into it until after.
Yeah, you did.
What's changed?
Less moose, more people.
Mm. The ticks are so bad, man. It's one of the craziest things. Is like you come up on a moose kill up there, and it's just the thing literally walks around with how many ticks are underneath it. It's like a blanket of ticks. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I found 40 myself one year in a week. Just me, not the other guys in the group. Just me. I found 40 dead ones in a week, and we only look in one, general area. So, yeah, it was
40.
It was rough. I found 3 dead heads that I had to get tags for, and I think I found 6 dead heads that year. I only got tags for 3 of them. I left the other 3 in the woods because they were small, and I was sick of calling the warden to meet him in town. It was it was ridiculous. It was. I think I found a 55, a 57 and a half, and like a 48, and it was sickening. I was like, yeah, it's bad, man. It's before I was there, it must have been even better.
Was it because of the ticks, or was it like?
I think most of them are from. Most of the deadheads, right? Most of the bulls with antlers that you find are usually from fighting or getting wounded from a hunter, is my assumption. Because by the time the ticks are bad on them, it's like towards the spring, and those bulls have already lost their antlers.
Right.
But I think sometimes they get them too because like the year before it was bad, so then they don't really recover well through the summer, and I
Mm.
think some of them just succumb, from just being in bad shape overall. The rut takes a toll on them. If they have a really bad winter and they barely survive, and then they're still skinny and stuff through the summer, I think after the rut they'll kill themselves in the rut. I mean, they'll run themselves right down to nothing. So
Yeah, and I think that too, and especially if it has a real bad winter. I mean, if they get stuck in some of the roads and stuff like that, I mean, it gets pretty brutal for them. It's,
yeah,
you know, and you do find a ton of deadheads too. Like deadheads that are shed out, like shed out deadhead. We find them all the time. I mean, you go back to camp, and out of 4 or 5 of us, there'll be 6, 7 by the end of the week. Like just shed out bulls, skulls.
yeah.
It's nuts to me. But let's turn the key, man. Why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do? We kind of went in that one hard.
Um, yeah. So I'm Nick Campagna. Born and raised in Vermont, just outside of in Williston, just outside of Burlington. Um, I grew up, following Dad through the woods, hunting and fishing and ice fishing, and um, Dad was never much of a turkey hunter, but once I got hunter ed, that was the first thing that really seemed like I should be chasing. So I started out turkey hunting and then moved up pretty quick to deer hunting. And we had a camp in the Adirondacks. We still have it. And so I ended up following him around in the Adirondacks. And those are big mountains. And, when you have I'll say a strict dad, right? He's like, we're not giving up. We're not like, you don't have an opportunity to be weak, basically, right? Like Dad's like, we're going. Um, and I think that kind of will make or break a kid. But I loved it. I was behind him picking up sheds. He'd be deer hunting, and I'd never saw the deer. I would be looking at the ground all the time, and I was always walking out with an antler. It seemed like, and then because you can't hunt over there until you're like 16, I think it is, as a non-resident. So started hunting there. I got my first deer on youth weekend in Vermont, and mostly hunted the Adirondacks after that, Vermont a little bit. And then I kind of graduated into going to New Hampshire and Maine, just, reading the Benoit books and stuff. I was like, man, I want a 200-pound buck, and Adirondacks is, if you shoot 180 in the Adirondacks, you're doing good, at least in the high peaks where we are. So I kind of abandoned camp there for a bunch of years and headed to New Hampshire and Maine, and it paid off. I started shooting some better deer and saw a lot of moose. Got more interested in moose. When I grew up, it was always like moose suck. They push deer out of the best areas, and a lot of complaining from the older group. And then I kind of grew to love them. I'd see these bulls, and I'm like, man, those things are freaking badass. And then I found a couple old antlers when I was deer hunting, and that got me interested. I was like, all right, how do I go find these things like fresh? And then that kind of that was a rabbit hole that exploded. Yeah, and then I started guiding moose hunts after that, and now I'm videoing stuff, which is a whole new thing. And I kind of just got voted into being the guy that was going to edit all the video too. So yeah,
Now you're the guy.
yeah, now I'm the guy. Yeah, it's progressed. I'm not very good, but I get them slapped together and kind of get the point across. But this was my first year running the GoPro, like on the shoulder and all that, and I ended up shooting $3 when I had it on. I think you really only see, we'll see when I really go through the footage. I just started on the New Hampshire buck. The Adirondack buck, you can see him good. That video is already out. The main buck, I don't know if I was crouched over, so I think the camera's like kind of tipped just just too far down. I don't know if you see him when I shoot, but you see the other bucks run off for sure. There was 2 other bucks standing there. It was kind of ridiculous. And then the New Hampshire buck, I was so thick, I don't even know if you'll see him or not, but you'll see him alive in the video because he's Um, I hate to even say this on here, but he was swimming across the river after I shot him. He was still alive. He's in the river. So that's going to make an interesting video. I sat there for an hour and a half and watched him swim the river, breaking the ice after he was shot. So
That's cool. I mean, it's
yeah.
cool, but I mean, it's
Oh, it was heartbreaking. I wished I didn't hit him. Once he was in the water, I was like, man, I wish I wouldn't have hit him now because when I ran, I heard him hit the ice and break the ice. And I'm like, what in the world? And I was like, oh man, he tried to go across the river. So I sprinted over there and he was trying to crawl back up onto the ice to get back up onto the bank on my side. And then he saw me and he was like, well, I don't think so. So he turned around and started going the other way. And I was sick, I was like, what do you do? I can't shoot him in the water. I can't, if it was legal, I could have just shot him when he's 10 feet from shore, ran down there and grabbed an antler and pulled him up onto shore. Um, but he was, visibly swimming in the river. It's deep, so it wasn't like he was just standing in a couple inches of water. So I elected not to shoot him because it was the legal thing to do. Honestly, I wish I would have just shot him and deleted the video because it ended up turning into me watching him suffer for an hour and a half. And ultimately he drowned. I don't even think he died from the bullet wound. Like, he basically got so tired he kind of just stopped, and it was hard to watch. But I'm gonna make a video out of that. I'll have to cut a lot of it out because it's just not what we want to see. But the main buck's pretty good. Like I said, I don't think he's gonna be in there, but I know for sure that the 10-pointer that was with him is in there, and I think the other small buck is in there. So that's kind of cool.
yeah, but
Yeah,
the journey of it, the going through the whole process. I mean, the kill shot's great, right? But just the
yeah.
process of it and what it takes and what you endured throughout that hunt is more or less the important thing of it.
Yeah, honestly, I think the New Hampshire and Maine videos, I hate to do it because I feel like people, when they watch these videos, I feel like they get kind of bored quick. Um, but they might be like 3 days long each because that's about what it took to get into the area to kill these deer. The one that ran across or swam across the river, whatever, he did it the day before when it wasn't frozen.
Wow.
Jumped the river, swam across. I drove all the way around, got on him, chased him 6.5 miles, went back the next day, got back on his track, and he jumped right in the river again. But the main buck, it was like 3 days of messing around. There's a really good clip of a buck jumping out of his bed, like, I don't know, 10, 15 yards in front of me. There's a big bough coming off a fir tree, and it was covered in snow, and he was laying right behind it. And you can see it. If I slow the video down, I mean, you can see him come right up out of his bed. And I kind of had a shot. I only got a glimpse at the rack. I didn't have much of a shot. It was muzzleloader, and so I just didn't shoot, and I kind of regretted it right away. But it worked out really well. Obviously, the next day I got that other one, but so those videos might be multiple days because they may want to be a really short video. If I just run with that day, it's just basically I turned the camera on and it was pouring rain and just got lucky. I didn't really go for that far and caught up to him. There was a couple times there where I had the GoPro off and I was kind of doing my clover leaves and stuff to find the track again, but yeah.
I appreciate a good multiple day hunt on YouTube. There's too many 6-minute hunts on there, and you don't get the full flavor of what it took and the hard work and the early mornings and the miles and all that stuff that led to the success. It's just like in the tree, deer comes in, shot over, and like it has way more to it than that,
Yeah,
And
yeah, I agree.
I know what you're saying. I think a lot of people are conditioned to like lose interest fast, so people tend to make 6-minute YouTube videos. But like, I'd much rather sit down and watch a 27-minute video when it's the kill's right at the end, but you get to see everything leading up to that moment.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I'm leaning that way, even though ultimately it might turn off some people, but I think it'll be a better product.
The real ones will stick around.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing, right? Like those are the people you
Yeah,
to watch it. Who cares about the rest of them? Like the guys that want to know what actually happened and what you and they're like Steve said, the 6 minute videos and you're trying to smash 3 days worth of hunting into it. Like it's not real. And then we talk about it a lot. Like as far as like people think that it's just easy to go out and track a deer. Like they don't understand that you went home to camp 3 times and then finally caught up with a buck. Like it's with empty handed. They just think that you go out there and you can just jump on a track and go over the next hill and there he is. A lot of people think
yeah,
that very easy.
yeah. It's you know, it that's like the one thing that I hear all the time. People are like, "Man, you make it look easy," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you don't see all the days that like it didn't go good." You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, even like this is like I said, the first year that I was doing any video really. In the past, I've like shot deer and then taken my iPhone and electrical taped it to a tree and done like a little interview. But the first year actually videoing, and it's insane how much GoPro footage I was dumping. Just like, okay, this never turned out to be anything. Delete, delete. I'm like Bluetooth to the GoPro in the app, just deleting footage, like just
Hmm.
clearing the card back up. Um, yeah, it was definitely some extra work, but it worked out. It worked out good. It was pretty cool to see what I had after too.
How much are you running in that GoPro? Like if you're tracking, I mean, you've been doing it long enough, so I'm sure you probably have a knack for knowing about like something should be happening soon, and you know when to turn it on. But are you running that GoPro a lot?
I'm running it all day, so
Okay.
I got it hooked to an external battery pack, and it's just because I'm not smart enough to remember to turn that thing on and
Me
off, and I'll,
neither.
like, and it's not, or maybe it's not smart enough, but it's like my goal is to get that deer, and
Right.
I don't care about this camera really. Um, so yeah, I have a external battery pack, and it's plugged into that, and it's just on the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
I
tough
need to start doing that because same thing, dude. Like I'll get like the pre-hunt footage and all that stuff set up, and then like once I see antlers, dude, I just black or who says it? I brown out. And
brown out. Yeah, brown
you
out.
know, the deer's running away with a hole in its side. I'm like, I never even turned the cameras on. Didn't even
Didn't
didn't
even know I had them.
have a camera. I didn't even know I had a camera.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why, like, before when we first got on here, we were talking about turkey hunting. Like, I don't really care if I shoot a turkey, so I've kind of already made up my mind that I'm probably gonna just carry a camera this spring, an actual camera, and I'll just call and be a camera guy and try to just get as much good video as I can, of whatever. If my boy wants to go, or my old man, girlfriend, buddies, whatever. Like, the GoPros are cool and everything, but I think definitely the over the shoulder from a real camera I think is better. So who knows? Maybe next fall I'll break down and take a couple days off and run a camera for somebody else. But I don't know.
Well, now they
I,
have the whole GoPro 360 or the 360 cams, the Insta 360s. Like that's one thing I've been looking into for that is like because at that point it's now doing a 360 video of you, and it actually it's super decent footage. And you don't have to worry about it. You just run it at all times, and it will literally get 360 degrees around you. And I guess it's pretty easy to edit, to be honest with you.
hmm,
I don't know. I was thinking about running it as like an oh shit camera just in case something happens. Just constantly have the thing running. And if you don't turn on the camera, I was gonna actually buy one for Steve for his birthday so that he had it, so he could always get it on camera. He always had it running. So, but Nick, I really want to talk to you about some moose shed hunting. Because it's getting to that time of year. I know it's a sore subject. I'm sorry, Nick. I'm sorry, but we don't like a lot of people in the North Woods, but you know what?
ugh,
I think people are
it's
so interested in it, and I
it's
think
too
there's
late now, anyways.
it's too late. We're surpassed it. There's no more years of 300 antlers. Those days are over. And what was it? 2021, I think. That was your greatest year, right?
Yeah, 20 or whichever. The first year of COVID, that was the year 276.
276. That's because they wouldn't let anybody in the North Woods because you had to um, quarantine when went up there. They gave us. We went up in 2020 during the hype of COVID, and we went in, and they wouldn't let us in the gate. They told us that we had to quarantine at our campsite for 5 days before we went into the woods.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I just went in the woods.
I was like,
Yeah, I
what?
don't know. I don't think there was anybody at the gate when I went.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
Oh.
I did whatever I wanted that spring. Like I shed hunted. I think I shed hunted for a week, and then I was like so tired that I took a week off, and then I went back for another week,
Mm.
and it was ridiculous. But like by the time I was done, it was like everything was green. It was flowers growing, and I was like picking up brown antlers, like in the green stuff, like in it was kind of ridiculous, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
So when you go in there, right, and you're moose shed hunting, what are the things that you're looking for to put yourself in the predicament to be able to find antlers?
Cover and food. Um, and then some areas are going to have cover and food, but there's not going to be rubs and whatever. There's no bull sign, no bull poop, no rubs. Um, I still look a little bit because you never know if a group, because like sometimes a group of bulls will move and they'll drop all their antlers in an area before they even get a chance to rub it up. Um, but I don't look too hard. If I don't find something pretty quick, I'm out.
So what is supposedly the food source that you're looking for that time of year?
So it depends on how deep the snow was. Um, but generally, the maple, um, soft maple, or balsam fir. Those two things will be the main food source. Um, some areas have good yellow birch. They'll eat that. Striped maple, they'll eat that. The hardwood trees, well, and the softwood trees, but mostly the hardwood trees. The tops will be broke off. They'll be anywheres from if they're 8 feet tall, they've just eaten the buds. If they're 10, 12, 14 feet tall, they'll snap them right off. We're talking saplings that are inch and a half in diameter. They just snap it right off, and then once it's broken down, then they can reach the buds that were out of their reach naturally. um they do that with fir trees sometimes too when they're just overfed, but the fir trees usually they just look like somebody took a weed whacker to them. Right, there's just no branches left. They're just like a lot of guys up north will call them pecker poles. There's just nothing left. It's just somebody destroyed your Christmas trees. um, if you're seeing that, you're good. I mean, that's what you want to see. Mature trees, not really. Sometimes the back of a like if you're in like say there's a cut that's 5 6 years old and it's all good feed. There's fir trees, there's maple. It's all fed up and you're finding some bull poop and you're maybe finding a couple antlers or you're not finding a couple. Like a lot of times if the outskirts of that cut has like some big mature fir trees, that good thermal cover will have a little bit less snow under it, and a lot of times they'll just go in there to bed, but then they'll go right back out to feed. um, it's just really different. It's just it's hard to explain because I've shed hunted, I don't know, 8 different zones in Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire. Doesn't matter where you are, everything's different. You know what I mean? Like it's different between very mountainous areas, mildly mountainous, or flat areas. They're gonna in a more mountainous area, they're gonna find a bench to bed on. More like a whitetail would do. Um, those flatter areas, you get in like zone 3, zone 6, um, zone 2. Those are kind of like flat, you know what I mean? And then it makes it hard to pinpoint where they want to be, where they're safe. Um, and I say flat. They have hills, but some people would take offense to that probably. But they're just not as mountainous as places, where there's moose. There's some big mountain. The biggest mountains have moose on them. I mean, Katahdin has moose on it. Mount Mansfield in Vermont has moose on it. The mountains that have weather stations have moose on them. It's just they only go to a certain elevation because that's as far as they can really squeeze through the trees and feed.
Yeah, and do you find like are you like running around and doing a lot of e-scouting before you go into a place, or are you just kind of like boots on the ground to try and find out where they're hiding?
A little bit of both. So when I first started going, I used to have the old paper maps,
Hmm?
the gazetteer, and I used to like open the paper map and sit next to my computer and open Google Earth on my computer and like find the road on Google Earth that's on the map, maybe, but they change the road so often, a lot of times they're not there. And I would try to find cuts that look good on Google Earth and then kind of figure out where that was on my paper map. And then I would take a highlighter and I would draw a circle on it. And then in the spring, I would have like 50 of those places and I would go there. And if it was good, I would just leave it like that. And if it was no good, I would put an X through it. And I still have that map. I should probably burn it so nobody finds it. But
I was gonna say, can I borrow it? What's
yeah,
the rental fee? No.
yeah, you can have it. Yeah, I mean it's those places are not. The last time that I went to like some of my best places, it was awful. I mean, I was the first person in there. Me and a buddy of mine. We drove through the biggest snowbank, man. Got buried, stuck. Nobody had been in there. We got stuck. And I'm like, it's supposed to be 70 degrees today. We'll just get this thing out at the end of the day. We'll let it melt out while we're shed hunting, and we'll come back. So we hiked in there, long ways. It was like 3 miles. Hiked in there, which up north that's a long ways. So usually you can park your truck and like find one from the truck or within 50 yards of the road. So we hiked in like 3 miles, and as soon as we got to where we wanted to get, I'm like, hey man, I gotta go to the bathroom here. You go down, go where you're gonna go. I was like, I'm gonna go potty real quick, and I like walk in the woods, and there's an antler. You're like, oh cool. Walk back out, do my deed, go down the road, cut into where I was gonna cut in. There's a 14-pound brown antler, nice one, laying right in the trail. That was the only two antlers we found. We found them immediately. If they're there, you find them. Like I hear guys talking about like, oh man, the sign was awesome. I gridded that place, and I'm like, no, dude. If you don't find something quick, get out of there. Like they're not there. If
Because they'll
they're
be
not
there,
trying
right?
to hide them.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are like, oh yeah, they must have hit it on me or something. Like, no, dude, they're not trying to hide those things. The biggest ones fall in the wide open. That's why you don't find them because somebody else already did. They dropped that thing in the middle of the road and somebody found it on a snowmobile or during deer season or
Because they're in those that open areas where they are spending most of their time, right? And they're traveling in those open areas.
yep. Especially, you know, northern Maine is tough. Like I said, every area is different. So like central Maine, western Maine, far eastern Maine is different than far northern Maine. So like far northern Maine gets way less deer hunters. Way less. So there's not guys driving these roads all the time like there is in Jackman,
Hmm.
right? And because there's not guys driving the roads all the time, the bulls are just in the road all the time. So all of deer season, right? All of November, all of December, these bulls are in the road. And usually the biggest dudes lose them first. So they're just going to be laying in the road. And that's why you see pictures of people with giant antlers on their snowmobile because it was the first guy to ride out there. I can't tell you how many huge antlers I have from up north that I never matched up. And I know where the thing landed. You know what I mean? Like
On the back of
it
the
landed
snowmobile.
in that road. Because I found them big, big antlers. Like 20 yards from the road, 50 yards from the road, and I'm like, I know where it fell.
Yeah, on the back of a snowmobile.
Yeah, yeah. It's frustrating. Like I've found them, and the problem is like up north there. I'm careful how I word this. People don't have respect for the woods and the animals. So you get to those strip cuts up there, and they'll ride every strip through the woods on a snowmobile. And I don't know if they just aren't smart enough to figure this out, but like if you ride through there on your snowmobile and the bulls are there, you're going to push them out, and then you're not going to find anything.
Mm-hmm.
You might find whatever already fell, but say there's 10 bulls in there and one of them dropped. There's 2 antlers. You could have found 20 if you'd have just waited till the spring. But once you bump them, they go to really dumb places. And unfortunately, that's how it is now. I found one of the last really big ones I found up there. We had the bull nickname because I found a couple different antlers, but we called him the road shed bull. And one of the first ones I found it from the road in a truck, and I saw it in the woods. It was like leaned up against some fir trees, and he was like 3.5 years old probably, but he had 11 nice big long points. Like a 13-inch wide palm. The antler almost made book, and it was like a 3.5-year-old bull. And then I don't know, 4 years later or something, I found another one from him, and it was jumbo, and it was laying at the bottom of a tiny rub in a skid trail, and there was only about 10 yards of the skid trail that was melted out in the spring. The rest still had snow, and there was snowmobile tracks all up and down through the snow, so they were just riding over that antler. And the first place to melt out was where that antler was, and I never got the match to that one. I'm sure I know where it was.
That sucks, man. That sucks. So tell us a little bit about the big set that you had found last year. I really want to hear that full story because that is an incredible thing. I remember watching it on social media when you found that thing. Like that's something very, very special.
Yep. So I had a hunch that there was some bulls in this area, and because I was deer hunting, and so the whole time when I was deer hunting, there wasn't any snow. I just kind of went on a little scouting mission, and I'm like, man, there's some bulls in here. I should come back and put a camera. And I was actually headed back to the truck. This was like I wasn't planning on putting a camera that day or anything. I just while I was in there, I'm like, man, there's huge. I mean, there was fir trees in there, just 12, 14 inches around, just hammered. And there's a lot of mountains in Maine that have big trees that are rubbed. But like I kicked a few whatever old antlers out of the way that day, and they were kind of laying in the open, and I was like, man, these shouldn't be here. You know what I mean? If anybody shed hunts this, these shouldn't be here. So fast forward through the day, and I'm like headed back to the truck, and I see a bull, and I see another bull, and they're like low 50s. They're good bulls, but they're not like I'm not jumping out of my skin. And I take a few steps. I was gonna get some video, and I take a few steps, and that big one just turns and looks at me. He's like off to the side, and then he turns and he just trots away, and I'm like, man, that's the biggest bull I've ever seen. I think like that he was ridiculous. His body looked bigger than the other bulls, and his antlers still looked stupid big compared to his body. So I'm like, all right, well, there's like 3 good ones here. So I go and I put a camera, and like I think like 2 days later, maybe I put a camera, and it was just a regular camera. I should have put a cell camera probably because it was service. It's a pretty obvious spot, really. Probably why there's nobody looking there. So I go and I just I didn't do much, right? And then last winter, it was really weird. There was like we had snow, but then remember we got all that rain. I don't know if you guys got it or not.
Yeah, it was the same. Yeah.
Yeah, but like shit all melted. We got all this rain. All these roads got washed out, and I was like, man, I wonder if I can get in there. And a buddy of mine he lives in Maine, and he was like, man, he sent me a picture. He was out shed hunting, and there was like an inch of snow or something where he was, and I'm like, what in the world? And I was like, where are you? And he's like, obviously up on the side of a mountain, right? Like big fir trees and whatever. And he's like, yeah, there's just no snow. Like, we lost it all. Like, I had more than he did in Vermont. And I'm like, shit, man. Like, I should go check that spot, you know? So I didn't make it up there, and I didn't make it up there, and I didn't make it up there. And it was like snowing. And I'm like, man, I screwed this opportunity all up. Finally, I go up there, and I got my buddy with me. And I had been to some other places, but I hadn't been there. I got him with me, and I'm like, man, we got to go check this spot. And we get in there. And I mean, the place is tore to shit. I mean, it's like I walked in there and I'm like, man, I wish I would have put a camera right here. But when you're deer hunting, you don't really get a chance to really scope the place out. And there was a very obvious spot where they were sparring all the time. And big tracks, they're everywhere. And we weren't seeing any bulls, but it was super crunchy, right? It was like that icy stuff, and they don't like to move that much when things get icy. So we ended up kind of splitting up. It always happens. We're always like, oh, stay 50 yards apart. And then, he sees something and I see something. And then, but I'm like, hey, there's cell service. So if you find something or whatever, just give me a call. So I end up, and I go way faster than he does too. I just walk fast. So I'm like way out in the back, and I run into, I think there was two bulls. Doesn't matter. I think like 40, mid 40s or something. And I was like, well, those aren't the ones I saw during deer season, and I kind of made a loop and I wasn't finding anything. And I'm like, nah, this spot's kind of a bust, like those bulls must have left. And so I start kind of hooking back towards where I had left him. And I assumed he was still pounding around in the brush, And I come to another spot where there was like a little open area, like this little saggy area, and it was all wet. And they had hammered that too. I was like, man, I can't believe there's not one stupid antler laying around here from, like, there's no boot tracks. Nobody's been in here. And the road was all jacked up. We had taken my snowmobile and, like, basically ridden on gravel. Like, because you couldn't make it with a truck. So we had, like, gone down through this brook and back up the other side and out this road. Like, there was no way. I mean, you could either walk 5 miles from where it was washed out or you could take a sled. So, like, I burned the skags right off of the bottom of my sled. And so nobody'd been in there, and I'm kind of like, all right, this is a bust. We're gonna go somewhere else. Like I said, I get to that second spot where it's tore up, and I was like, I can't believe there's not one here. Like, there's not one old bull here that dropped early. And I look at Onyx really quick, and I'm like, all right, I'll just cut through. I was like, it looks like there's some old skid trails that cut through. And I like pop out into this opening, man, and the snow all like freaking falls down on my neck and everything, And I'm like shaking myself off, and I look up, and that one antler is just like laying in the wide open, like wide open. And I'm like, oh, that's a big one, And I like, it didn't even dawn on me at first. I had no idea. It looked like a 70-inch antler. It looked like a big antler, but it didn't really hit me. And as I'm walking up to it, I'm like, oh, damn, that's a big one. Like that's real big, And I get up to it and I see the tracks all around it. And I'm like, well, this thing's it's only been here for like a day. And I'm looking at the burr and stuff, and there's still blood on it. But I didn't pick it up. I didn't touch it. I'm like, I don't even want to like think about it. Like, I just got to look for the match. So I call up my buddy. And I'm like, hey, I just found one. I sent him the pin on Onyx, and he's like, all right, cool. He's like, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, come right over here and help me find the other one. Like, we'll just double team this area. I'm like, we're going to find it. Like, they're big and heavy. The other one's right here somewhere. So I waited for him. I zigzagged that area right there where the antler was. I waited for him, and when he came over, he just about crapped his pants. He's from Ohio, and like moose antlers to him, just like the best thing ever. He's like, I don't think you know how big it is. And I'm like, it's big. And he's like, I think you did it. Because I set a goal for 80 inches, and everybody was like, that's ridiculous. Like, it's just not possible. There's not as many moose now. Like, they get shot. Like, it's just, I had guys that were really good shed hunters that were like, it's not possible. Like, good luck. And he's like, I think you did it. And I'm like, well, take my phone, get a video. I was like, I'll pick it up. He's like, what are you going to say? And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say. And I just ended up not saying anything. I just picked up the antler, and I was like, it was actually unreal how heavy it was. Like, when I picked it up, I was like, I didn't know if it was me. I didn't know if in my brain I was like, wow, this is really heavy, or if it was just really heavy. So I like picked it up and I'm like looking at it, and his face, he's videoing, and his face the whole time is just like I can see he wants to stop videoing and touch this antler. So I put it down, and he works out every day at home. He hands me my phone. He picks the antler up, and he's like, that thing is every bit of 25 pounds. He goes, it's at least 25 pounds. He's like, I pick up a 25-pound dumbbell every day. He's like, I'm telling you right now. And I'm like, man, the heaviest one I've ever found, I think, was like 21 and a half. And that was a tank. And he's like doing curls with it. And he's like, this thing is, and he put the end of the paddle on the ground, and the brow was above his waist, like the burr in the brow was above his waist. And he's like, this thing's 40 something inches long. He's like, this thing is, I'm like, yeah, probably. I don't know. I'm like, we just need to find the match. And so we threw it back down on the ground right there, and we started zigzagging. And there was a really thick patch of fur, and there was like bull tracks just going everywhere. And he was in there zigzagging, and a trail went up the mountain, and it like went up onto this little plateau, and it was like big fur. And I'm like, well, maybe he just went up there and laid down. So I walked up there, and my phone's ringing, and I grab it, and he's like, you didn't hear me screaming? And I'm like, no, I didn't hear you. And he's like, I just screamed for you like 4 times. He's like, I was just talking to you. He's like, I could hear you. We were just talking. And I don't hear good. Like, I'm kind of deaf from the army and stuff, too many guns. And I'm like, no, I didn't hear you. And he's like, I think I found the match. But he's like, there's snow on it, and I don't really know. So I walk down there, and I yell, and he yells, and I'm like, all right, he's over there. And I walk into this opening, and there's a little tiny fir tree, and I just see the top of a palm and this brow sticking out of the snow. I'm like, yep, it's the match. Like, there's not antlers with 40-inch long palms just laying all over the place. Like, that's it. And like, score wise, it ended up being quite a bit less. But I he was like, wow, well, that's your antler. Give me the phone, and I'll video you picking it up. And we've never done that. When I take people, if you find it, it's yours. It doesn't matter if it's the match to mine. Moose sheds are really tough. Like, you and I could go in a spot together. The three of us could go in a spot together. I could find 10, and you guys could find nothing.
Right.
That's just how it is. So I never played that game where you had to give away antlers, because one guy could find 5 browns, and then everybody else could help him match them up, and they'd have 5 sets. And so I'm like, nah, man, it's your antler. Like, you found it. It's found.
It's
Like,
all
I
that
want to just find it, like, or get pictures with the set, whatever. And so I videoed him. He pulled it out, and that one, it had quite a bit less points, and the palm wasn't as narrow, and it was still like, it looked small compared to the other one, and it was still I think it was 22 pounds, and when we weighed it, I think it was 22 pounds, but it scored like 74 and a half, 75, something like that, which is jumbo for Canada moose. And but anyways, we had both. I found another one on the way out. He found a little weird one on the way out, and we ended up getting them weighed. That first day, we put them next to a wood stove, and we let them dry out. And there was a guy kind of local that I knew, and we brought him to his house the next day. So after they laid in front of a wood stove for a night and a day, we brought him over and weighed him. And mine was, I think, 26 and a half, and his was like 22. And I see guys finding them all the time. They pull them out of the snow, and they go home and weigh them, when they're still wet and everything. And I'm like, man, if I'd have weighed that one when it was wet, and like,
35 pounds.
oh, it would have, I bet you anything, it would have been 27 and a half or 28. Like, it was, you could tell the difference the next day, and it was still super heavy. Like, it's, I told you earlier, if I took that thing down right now, everything would move. I would get hurt. But yeah, it was pretty ridiculous, like, with both antlers and the spread credit that we gave him, he's like 220. Like that's an Alaskan bull. Um,
Is he still alive?
yeah,
Yep. So
yep.
you're gonna have his match this year too.
Oh, I mean, I can't say anything yet. I might already have it.
Oh, okay. I might
Uh,
already have it.
you gotta keep people guessing. You know what I
That's
mean?
right. They
I'm
gotta.
uh I'm all done with posting much for pictures of antlers. Unfortunately, it's just people are gonna do whatever's good for them. So
Why? What? Just as far as like people just going and trying to find what you've already accomplished, kind of.
yeah, yeah. People are people are inherently jealous. You know what I mean? Like I've got like I do. I've got friends in my life that like when you get older, I feel like your circle gets smaller and smaller. You know what I mean? And like it sort of sucks at first, right? You're like, man, I used to have all these buddies, and like, but it doesn't really suck when you start thinking about it. It's like, no, like I'm down to a good group. There's seriously like two people. I think I have two people that I tell everything to as far as antlers.
Hmm.
That's it. You know what I mean? Like, people are just they're gonna if they can take advantage of what you're doing or do you dirty, they're gonna do it. You know what I mean?
It's kind of crazy that you bring that up because, and especially over antlers, and I've lost a good deal of friends because of antlers, like literally over antlers, like stealing spots, going into places, bringing other people, starting another camp without you, like that kind of thing, and like it's sad. I was blessed with the opportunity to go with Rich. Like Rich took me under his wing at a young age and took me up there and taught me the whole ways of the world and everything. And I never really I never really brought anybody else up there. I never really, I never or I never went to his spots. I would then venture off and find my own thing after he had kind of taught me. But it's like a shared respect. I would never go there without telling him that I was going up north. But I didn't owe him nothing, but just out
Yeah.
of respect, like he taught me, he brought me to this camp, and that's where we go. And we still have, he found some antlers and he sends me, he tells me everything. Like I'm one of
Yeah.
those guys with him and vice versa because there's just a respect thing. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that it's that bone drives people crazy, man. For no,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like Rich had some guys that went with him, right? And man, they were, you know, we had some moments, you know what I mean, where they like, we were finding so many, right? Like my group was finding so many that they were I don't know if they thought we were going to their places or if we were trying to go to their places. Um, one year, Rich sent me some places to go. Right? He was
He's
like,
like
"Go."
that.
He was like, "Go try here," and I was like, "Okay, man." I'm telling you, we went to the place he told me about. Didn't find anything, and we were driving down the road, and I was like, "Man, this place looks kind of good. Let's go in here." This is at the end of the day, right? I'm like, "Let's go in here real quick." Or that's not true, actually. The first place he sent us, we didn't find anything. So we went to another spot that he didn't send us, but it was on the same road. We found a couple. And then we were driving out. I was like, oh, what about this place? Like, let's just check real quick. There's like 2 hours of light left. We found 25 antlers in 2 hours, like loaded up. Like, we're like, this is the best place ever. We're coming back tomorrow. So the next day we go there. And the next day was the first day that they were going to be there. Dude, it was like one of the spots that they had already partially hit, like because they had made two trips that year and they
Right.
had already found a bunch of big ones in there. And the next day they like see us there and they're like, how do you guys know about this spot? And we're like, this is where we were yesterday. And he's like, this is where you found all those antlers yesterday? And I'm like, yeah. And it was this funny thing. Like, I think Rich's buddies were mad at him because he had told me a place that was close enough where I ended up finding this other place. Um, but like, after that year, it was basically like we would never even see each other, right? Like, it was like, oh, you guys are gonna go this way, we're gonna go this way, and like, man, I think those guys were still feeling weird that like it's like the fact that we were even in the woods remotely close to them made them feel like there was less antlers to find.
Yeah. But
Um, those were the good days though. Like you could go anywhere then and find one. Like it's tough because we found so many old antlers. Like the other guys in my group that didn't have dogs would find 50 or 60 antlers with me in a week. Without a dog. Like there used to be so many old antlers, and now there's a ton of places. And it's not bragging, but like me and my buddies, and like I had the dog. Like there's just not the antlers to find because we found years and years and years worth of old ones plus the brown ones. So it's been a couple years since I've been to a few of those spots. So there's, there could be some year olds, 2 year olds, whatever. But man, it gets hammered now. The last time I was up there, there's people everywhere, and like you said, they're jealous. People are weird. There was, we had a guy one time in the rain. Like I drove into this road, and the road went like 3 miles, and he's like a half mile in there, and he just parked right in the road. And he was a local guy, and so I'm like, what? I'm like, what the hell are we gonna do? And I'm like in the truck, I'm sitting there, and he like walks out to his truck, like he just like comes out of the woods, and he's got like full rain gear on, right? Like the rubber rain suit, like it was raining, and he like gets in the truck and just pulls over just enough where we can like go by him, and he like goes back in the woods, and I'm like, all right, well that was nice of him, and I like pull up and I put my window down, and I was gonna be like, hey, thanks, and he just like gives me the dirtiest look, man. And I was like, I don't think he wants me to say thank you, And I'm like, whatever. And so I drive to the end of the road, and I was like, we turned around. I'm like, let's just go to a different road. Like this guy's gonna be grumpy, And we turn around and we go to a different road, like, a couple miles away. And like 3 hours later, it's noon, and we've like shed hunted, and we're on the tailgate, and we got like, I don't know, antlers. And this guy rolls up, the same guy, he like rolls up and he's like, oh, it's a good thing I didn't want to go here today. And I'm like, Jesus, man, like we drove away from you, and yeah, it's just the whole thing is it's just not that much fun, like it's really taking the fun out of it for me, to be honest with you.
It's so true, and you run in. It's crazy because there was 2 years ago. I would have been, it was like first melt out, and we finally get in there, right? Because you're always waiting. Like you get to a certain mile marker, and there's so much snow, and you're like you can't get in, and you're like you have this destination that you're gonna go, so you think you're gonna be the first one in there, and you find a patch, and someone already run through there with a dog, like bad, like tracks everywhere, like 2 3 days, and you see the guy, and you're like, oh, how was it in there? He's like, I've been through here 4 times. We picked up 15, and I'm like,
Yeah,
dude, I literally drove all the way up here to be the first guy and you know what I'm saying? And it's like,
yeah,
but it is what it is, like it is what it is, but it's kind of sad, and you see it, and it's more of a bragging thing than what it really is, like just the remote aspect to go up there and be up there and find antlers. And I tell everybody it's God's country just to be in camp at night and find a handful of antlers. Like it's an amazing experience, but it's kind of starting to get to the point where it's not, like you said, it's not even fun anymore. It's the same as whitetail shed hunting down here. I mean, it's just it's ruined a lot of things. Like I said, it ruined a lot of friendships. It's ruined a lot of things, and it's over a bone. Like it's like I just
yeah,
don't understand it. I don't get
yeah.
it.
I feel like, like I used to, I won't name any names, but like there's been a lot of people that have like said that, like, oh, Nick's, jealous, like he's an antler hog, like it's not my fault that the dog used to find a ton of antlers, right? um and like the guys that know me best know that that's not the case. Like
Mhm.
I bring buddies all the time, and I'm like, hey, go in there, and they'll walk in there and be like, found one. I've always tried to like steer my buddies into antlers. My buddy from Ohio has the match to my 80. Like I didn't even ask for it. He has
Right.
it. It's at his house. He took it home. He found that year. He found the bull last year. He found the bull that I wanted to find the most. One that I knew was alive. That antler was 25 and a half pounds, and it was a non-typical antler. So like, usually you measure a moose antler. You measure the paddle on the back side, right? The
Mhm.
length and the width are measured on the back side. Well, his had a big fin on the back. so you couldn't measure on the back. If you measured on the front of that antler, it was like 76 inches or something.
Oh.
Measuring on the front of it, I told him, I'm like 100% guaranteed. If you could measure on the back of that without that thing on there, it's at least 78, if not 80.
Hmm?
You know what I mean? That antler is every bit as big as my 80. I mean, it's ridiculous. That bull is dead, unfortunately, I think. We were hoping to see what he looked like this year, but like that's what I do it for. You know, he found that antler and he lost his freaking mind. Like the antler was between us. I was up the bank and he was down below me, and we were walking, and I just hear, like, I don't even remember, just this noise, you know, just it sounded like some kind of alien noise. He's like, and I just look down the hill and I see him just like hyperventilating, you know, and I still couldn't see it. I'm like looking where he's looking and I don't see it. And there was like a couple big trees and like a hump of ground in the way. And he was freaking out. And I walked down there. When I saw that thing, I'm like, oh, that's the one that I was like, that's the one that I wanted to find. But I wasn't the slightest bit upset that he found it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's how you have to be with like I said, your circle gets small, but like, man, your core group of buddies, like, do I want to shoot a bigger buck than you? Yeah. Do I want to find a bigger antler? Yes. Am I going to be upset at all if you find it? No, dude. Like, you know, I'm really good buddies with Timmy Bolduc. We talk all the time, right? During deer season, we're texting away. Like, do I want to shoot a bigger buck than him? Yeah, of course I do. But if he shoots a 300-pound deer that's 180 inches, dude, I'm going to be the first person to drive down there and just bear hug tackle his ass. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's how you have to be, I think. Everybody wants to find a big antler, shoot a big deer. You know, when it comes down to it, these things are just participation trophies, and every deer is what it is, especially if you're tracking like me. Like, it could be a 250-pound spike horn, you know what I mean? It's just, if they don't stick their head down in the snow and show you what they got for antlers, you really don't have a clue. And I'm not picky, man. If they've got 8 points, usually they're in deep shit, you know.
It it's so crazy, and especially, did you get more jealousy things when you had a dog? Because I feel as if when I had I still do have a shed dog, but um, I've had so many issues since I've had a good shed dog than when I didn't have a shed dog at all. Like, I have people that's like, so some of the guys that I used to shed hunt with, where that circle started to get smaller, constantly talking shit about me. Like, they would post up videos and be like, "No shed dog needed in the North Woods," kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's like, bro, you know what? I do it for me. Like, that's what it is. And and I've had friends that are like, "Hey, man, can you come and run the shed dog over here?" And I'm like, the deal is this: if we're shed hunting and we find the sheds, you can take pictures with them, but we get the sheds because we found them, right? Like, they just like you would, if you find them, they're yours, right? So we go into a spot, we find them, and then they're like, that asshole kept them. He should have gave them to me. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. That's not how we set the line, and the line was set. Like, if you find them, they're yours. If I find them, because it doesn't. I could just go to my spot and go shed hunt, and I don't need to be with you. Not to be
yeah,
disrespectful, but like,
yeah.
it is what it is.
See, I care even less about antlers at this point. Like, well, like last year, for instance, like I went down to the podcast with Pat Guyette and Pat Burns,
Yeah,
right? And I went shed hunting with those guys, and it was like Pat Burns had this picture of this giant 6-pointer, right? Like, the deer's not going to score. I mean, it's going to score insane for a 6-pointer, but like
right.
overall, it's not. You know what I mean? It's just this old crazy 6-pointer. He's like showing me pictures. Like, if I found him, I would give him to him. Cause like dude, I got antlers. I don't need any more antlers. You know what I mean? Like, and like if it's a deer he's gonna hunt, like,
Different
man,
story.
good luck. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't. I would rather find him and just be there and be like part of that whole deal. Like, I don't need to even take him home anymore. Like, I've given, like, the boys from Ohio would come up. I would find like a 12-pound brown antler, right? And then I'd be like, hey, come in here and help me match it up. and they would come in and help me match my antler, and I would give them the one that I found. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like,
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Yeah.
totally ass backwards for
Mm.
what most people do, man. But I just like, yeah, this is why I always like I laugh, like it stings a little bit to my core when people are like, "Oh, Nick's an antler hog or he's selfish or whatever," and I'm like, "Man, you don't have a clue." Like my buddy Cody, man, that dude's got anger management problems. When people say stuff like that about me, he gets like he's gonna fist fight, because he knows he's like, "Man, this dude's given me antlers and brought me in places where I would have never walked," and like it just means more to me, like if you're a real friend, I've had friends that weren't real friends, that find a lot of antlers now and stuff, but if you're a real friend, like it means way more that your friend's just happy and having a good time, like the first time we went to Colorado to elk hunt, me, my buddy, and my dad all bought elk tags, right, over the counter archery. My old man, just like turkey hunting, he didn't want to learn to run an elk call, right? He's like, "No, I'm good." So I'm like, "It's fine, it's whatever." And we kind of all agreed, like we sort of want to get dad to get one first because, he's my dad. He's older and stuff, so it's like he probably won't have as many opportunities to go, at least with a bow, as we will. So I kind of had this game plan, like we're gonna put dad in the hot seat if at all possible. And I learned to call pretty decent, I think, with a reed and a bugle tube, and Cody got pretty decent. And we were watching Born and Raised Outdoors and Elk 101 and all these things, right? We go out there, man. The first day, like we hiked in the afternoon, set up at dark, just like sleeping out of our backpacks, right? We're bivvy hunting. We get up the next morning, bulls bugling. It's like the second day of the season. We went super early. Everybody's like, "Oh, wait for the rut," and I'm like, "Screw that," And we go, man, and we get to this like ravine, and I tell these guys, I'm like, "Get down below me," and the bulls come right in. Like I call them right in, and they get to that ravine and they didn't want to cross it, so they come around the ravine. I have to like grab my bow now, get an arrow nocked, and I end up shooting this 5x5, and he runs off, and then like a 320 6 point walks out into the wide open at 30 yards after I've shot a 5x5 and is just bugling his head off at me. I can't shoot him. I'm already tagged out. These guys can't even see the elk because they're like just above them. So they come up and I'm like, "Yeah, I got one." Like I'm the one that cared the least amount about shooting one, and I end up shooting one. I've never bought an elk tag since. I go every year and I just call. And like it means more to me as a group thing, and I could have shot a couple bulls since then as the caller. They like, young bulls will like sneak in behind you or whatever. Um, but like, it's just about your friends and your family. And like, we're not going to take this shit with us when we're dead. Like, I'm sure my kid's going to sell these moose antlers for the most he can get for them. My deer heads will probably, you know, I got my 160 from New Hampshire right there. He'll probably rip the rack off of that mount and just like give it to his Great Dane or something. Like I don't. People get way too caught up in this shit, man. Like that's why I like the video now because I'm like, man, the hunt and like having the Adirondack one this year with me and my old man, we doubled up. Neither buck was real big, but it was just super cool. Like we both got bucks the same day. I'm following his, like I had to leave it was like 5 miles in there where I left my buck. And I like hike up out of there, get on his drag trail, follow him out, help him get his deer out of the woods, and then the next day we go back and get mine. And really, the story was more than it. Like the antlers are sitting in a bucket in the garage. Like I don't really care about the antlers that much, Like it just, in the end, the antlers mean the least amount.
It's the way it's supposed to be, and I think that everything is kind of social media and life and everything else is kind of caught to like that the antlers have to mean more. It means more to shoot something big and this, that, and the other thing, and it's not. I think the Northeast set the precedence for this, honestly, because how many deer camps, it didn't matter if you even shot a deer, but it was about spending time and eating food and playing cards. I mean, how
Yeah,
many
deer camp.
balls did you go to deer camp and there was very rarely was something hanging on the kill pole, like, because you went there, or there was, but it didn't matter, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? You were playing
yeah,
cards with the old men and hanging by the fire. It was just the way it was.
yeah. So I've been planning on writing a book now for a long time because, like, man, I had the cheat code. Like, I went to the Adirondacks with my dad and his buddies. Those guys shot some bucks. Like, they, if they would like go on podcasts and like share their pictures and stuff, people would be blown away at the deer that they had killed in the high peaks. Um, like that Adirondack deer camp for me was like it was like a cheat code. Like I said, like I would go to deer camp. Some days I would hunt with my dad. Some days Ken would take me. Some days Howard would take me. So I'm like learning everybody's style. And man, I mean they shot some. Like I said, 180-pound deer in the Adirondacks, a big deer, big deer. I can't tell you how many deer that they've shot that were 170 to 200 pounds in the Adirondacks. Like an endless supply of 120 and 130-inch deer, which is a big deer in the Adirondacks. Like in the high peaks where there's not a lot of good feed and stuff, like that's a big deer. And it was the most fun. Like it didn't even matter because I couldn't hunt till I was like 16. It didn't matter. Like I got to go to deer camp and just learn and just hang out with the guys. Like they would like they wouldn't, they weren't getting drunk, right? It wasn't like beer camp, right? It was it was actual deer camp, but it was like, some of them would have a whiskey at night. Dad's always had like one or two beers. He's not much of a drinker, but it was like everybody would come back and we have a generator and like you take a shower. And it was like shower, cook some deer meat up on the stove, and like the stories would start. Everybody would just kind of like say how their day went, what happened, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff. And it was like there was nothing I wanted to do. Like I swear to God, it made me a worse student in school because I just didn't give a crap, man. Like I just went to school after, and I was like, I just want to go back to camp. Like I don't want to deal with. I don't want to talk to you liberal teachers. Like I don't want, like I don't want to do any of this. Like I got art class, man. There's track and snow in the Adirondacks. Like what are we doing? Um, so that didn't probably help in that regard, but it was it was the most fun. Like I'm those guys will never understand how thankful I am. Like they all treated so none of them. Well, one of the other guys had a son, but he didn't hunt. So like I was the only next generation that was at camp. It was just me and a bunch of dudes from the generation before, and they were all shooting bucks. And I was with my dad when he shot a couple bucks, which is a hard thing to do to have a kid with you, especially tracking or whatever. And yeah, just so much fun. Like that's why I take my kiddo every chance I get. We've been pretty close too. Him and I have been the last couple of years. I've had him on buck tracks with me, and he's only 8 now. I mean, when he was 5, 6, and 7, I had him tracking bucks with me, and you got to pick your spot a little better. We don't need to go too steep, but he's learning a lot, and like that's just as much fun. It's really more about just the whole thing and the story and like who you're there with, and like I might even bail on shed season this spring. Like I'm half tempted to go to Arizona and just pick up elk antlers.
Well, you let me know. Just send me some pins then. No, just kidding, Nick.
Well, they don't have a season. Like I don't
Yeah,
want to do the Wyoming deal with the
yeah,
season, Colorado and all that.
that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Nick, what better way to end it with what we want to know what drives you outdoors, my friend?
Uh yeah, just the memories, you know what I mean? Like I was saying, that's what means the most. You can't take the antlers with you when you're gone, and you know, the circle gets smaller, and that's okay.
Mm.
As long as you're real true friends and everybody knows really what you're about, that's really all that matters to me. You know, we've had some we've had some crazy times, some wicked cool memories, and there's only 3 of us that know about it. You know what I mean?
That is the most important thing. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, man. I hope it's not the last time. Look forward to seeing you this summer and sharing some more stories and hanging out, maybe having a whiskey by the fire at Hunt Stock. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Can't thank you enough. And for everybody else, thanks for taking the ride right here on the Outdoor Drive.